There are moments in life when a strange magnetic pull draws two people together, as though some unseen hand had been moving the pieces of their lives in secret for years. Perhaps you've met someone and instantly felt a familiarity you couldn't explain, as though you were picking up a conversation that had been going on for centuries. It is not coincidence, it is convergence. The meeting of two aligned souls is less about chance and more about the inevitable dance of energy. Just as rivers, no matter how far apart, eventually meet the sea, two souls moving in the same frequency will find their way to each other. This is not mere romance or poetic fantasy, it is a law of the psyche and the cosmos. When inner harmony and intention radiate from two beings, the entire universe bends ever so slightly to close the distance between them. And when they meet, it feels less like discovery and more like remembering. Today, I will share 5 truths about this mysterious phenomenon, truths that might change how you view love, connection, and destiny. Alignment between two souls is often romanticized as a magical moment of fate, yet it is rarely understood that the true beginning of such a union is not in the meeting, but in the solitary work that precedes it. Before two lives can intertwine in harmony, each must first be in harmony with itself. It is not possible to meet another in truth if you have not yet met yourself. A heart that remains fragmented, full of inner contradictions, will seek others not from a place of wholeness, but from a place of lack. And what is sought from lack will always distort the connection, for it will project its emptiness onto the other and confuse dependency for love. The private corridors of one's being are where this alignment begins, in the hidden chambers where your thoughts, emotions, and actions must first learn to move together, like a river finding its own course. This is not the easy path. It is the slow, often painful work of examining the places you have abandoned within yourself, the memories you have tried to forget, the dreams you once cherished but now dismiss as childish, the grief you have buried under distractions. All of it must be brought into the light, because whatever remains in shadow will rise between you and the one you are meant to meet. I often think of it as the tuning of an instrument. Imagine 2 tuning forks placed apart. Strike one, and if the other is tuned to the same pitch, it will vibrate in resonance. But if the second fork is out of tune, no matter how strong the first vibrates, the second will remain silent. This is the nature of soul alignment. You cannot recognize, let alone sustain, the vibration of another if your own is dissonant. There was once a woman who confided in me her frustration over years of searching for love without success. She moved from one relationship to another, each time feeling the initial spark fade into confusion and disappointment. She thought perhaps she was unlucky, or that she was simply destined to be alone. But something within her refused to accept that this was the whole truth. At last she turned inward. She began therapy, not to fix herself for someone else, but to understand herself for herself. She wrote in journals daily, poured out her fears and longings onto the page, and began to revisit passions she had long neglected: painting, hiking, singing. Slowly, she felt a subtle change, not in the world around her, but in the way she moved through it. And then, without the frantic search, she met someone. It was not under a glittering sky or through some cinematic moment. It was in the simplicity of shared conversation at a mutual friend's dinner. But what struck her was the ease, the way their values aligned, how their dreams spoke to one another without effort. She told me later, "I didn't meet him when I started looking for him. I met him when I started finding myself." This was not coincidence. It was the inevitable meeting of 2 frequencies finally tuned to the same pitch. This is the paradox many overlook, that love does not come from striving outward, but from tending inward. We are often taught that if we want connection, we must cast our nets wider, search harder, and make ourselves more appealing to the gaze of others. Yet the deeper truth is that genuine connection cannot be manufactured by surface changes. It must emerge from the quiet revolution that happens when you live in agreement with your own nature. What does it mean to live in such agreement? It means that what you believe is reflected in what you do, and what you do is an honest expression of what you feel. It means that you are no longer performing for the approval of the world, but moving in step with your inner compass, even when the path it points to is difficult or uncertain. It means confronting the aspects of yourself you wish you could hide, and instead of burying them deeper, integrating them into a fuller sense of who you are. This is not to say that one must reach a perfect state of self-awareness before love can find them. Perfection is a myth, and the human soul is always in the process of becoming. But there is a threshold, a point at which you are no longer fractured in ways that distort your ability to see clearly. At this point, when you encounter another who is on their own journey toward alignment, there is a mutual recognition. It is as though the soul says, "Here is someone who understands the language I have been speaking in silence." We live in a world that often confuses urgency with destiny. We are told that time is running out, that we must hurry to find the one before the opportunity passes. But what if the timing of meeting someone is less about chance and more about readiness? What if every delay, every seeming failure in love, is in fact a message from life itself saying, "Not yet, you have more to uncover within yourself first." To align with another in the deepest sense, you must first have the courage to be alone with yourself. Loneliness in this context is not an emptiness to be feared, but a space in which you can hear your own thoughts without the noise of constant distraction. Many resist this silence because it reveals the truth of where they are out of harmony, but it is only by listening to these dissonances that you can retune your being to its natural pitch. And when you do, you will not need to chase alignment with another. It will happen with the same inevitability as the sunrise, a convergence that feels less like a miracle and more like the fulfillment of something that was always meant to be. You will not be drawn together by need, but by recognition. And that recognition will not be a fleeting spark. It will be a steady flame, one that burns more brightly because it is fed by two souls that know who they are and where they stand. True alignment begins when you stop looking outward for someone to complete you and start looking inward for the ways you can complete yourself. Only then will you be able to stand fully present when another soul, walking their own path of self-discovery, meets you at the crossroads. And in that moment, you will understand that the universe does not deal in random meetings. It deals in perfect timing, and perfect timing always begins with you. There is a peculiar, almost haunting familiarity that descends when two souls meet on the same frequency. It bypasses the usual mechanics of introductions and the slow building of trust. Instead, it moves directly to a level of recognition that feels older than the moment itself. This is not always the dazzling, intoxicating rush that storytellers call love at first sight. Often it is quieter, more grounded, and yet more profound a sense that you have stepped into the presence of someone you have been carrying in your memory without knowing it. The mind scrambles for explanations, trying to map this sensation onto past experiences. Yet it quickly becomes apparent that this familiarity is not the result of anything in the past that you can name. It is recognition without precedent, People often describe this as coming home, and they do so instinctively without rehearsing the phrase. Home is not just a place, it is a state in which you are unguarded. It is the relief of setting down the weight of performance and pretense. In the presence of such a soul, the subtle armor you wear in daily life begins to loosen without effort. Your words no longer feel curated, your gestures are uncalculated. You feel, for once, no urgency to earn their affection or to measure your worth in their eyes. Instead, there is the rare luxury of simply existing in your own skin without fear of rejection. This is not the laziness of apathy, it is the liberation of authenticity. The nervous system understands this recognition before the intellect does. You might notice that your breathing deepens, that a strange calm washes over you in the middle of conversation. It is as if your body has been bracing for a storm all its life, only to realize that the clouds have parted. There is a quiet agreement between you and the other person, not in words, but in something more primal. Science, in its own way, has begun to illuminate this mystery. Studies on emotional synchrony have shown that when two people are deeply attuned, subtle physiological patterns align, heart rates begin to mirror one another, breathing falls into similar rhythms, and even movements like blinking start to occur in unison. This is not mimicry, it is resonance. The body does not wait for conscious approval to begin this process. It responds to a deeper signal, as though two instruments had been placed near one another, and once one began to hum, the other could not help but join in. In the language of psychology, we might call this attunement, but the experience itself feels like something older than language, as though we are momentarily remembering a shared origin. It is no wonder that some people, upon meeting such a person, say they feel as if they have known them their whole life. The truth may be even more strange. Perhaps what they are recognizing is not a person they have known in time, but a pattern of being they have always carried within themselves, now reflected back to them perfectly. I once knew a man who described meeting his closest friend in this way. They were seated next to each other at a crowded seminar, and within minutes of speaking, both felt an inexplicable certainty that they would be part of each other's lives for a long time. It was not attraction in the romantic sense, nor was it a mere meeting of shared interests. It was a felt knowing, a deep, silent acknowledgement that whatever this connection was, it had a gravity they could not and did not want to resist. 10 years later, through marriages, career changes, and losses, they remained each other's anchor. He told me it was like meeting an echo I didn't know I was sending out. These meetings can be unsettling precisely because they collapse the usual boundaries between stranger and familiar. In our daily interactions, we often rely on a slow accumulation of trust, a gradual revealing of self, but with a shared frequency, much of that process is condensed. You may find yourself telling this person things you have never told another, not because you have decided they are trustworthy in a calculated way, but because something in their presence draws the truth out of you without fear. This can feel both exhilarating and frightening, for to be seen so quickly is to relinquish the control we often maintain over how others perceive us. And yet, this instant recognition is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it unfolds in subtle, almost invisible ways. It might be a shared glance across a room that lingers a second too long, not in flirtation but in quiet acknowledgement. It might be the ease of a silence between you, where the absence of words feels full rather than empty. It might be the way your laughter feels unforced, the way your attention is wholly present without the tug of elsewhere. What is remarkable is that such recognition is not limited to romantic bonds. It can occur between friends, between teacher and student, even between strangers who may never cross paths again. The form is less important than the essence, a deep alignment of being that needs no explanation. And while it may not always lead to a lasting relationship, it leaves an imprint on the psyche, a reminder that such resonance is possible, that it exists in the fabric of human connection. I believe that part of the reason we are so moved by these encounters is that they reveal in an instant the illusion of separateness. We spend much of our lives navigating a world of boundaries, personal, cultural, emotional, and while these are necessary, they can also convince us that we are fundamentally alone in our experience. When two souls meet on the same frequency, even briefly, it punctures this illusion. For a moment, we glimpse the truth that there are others whose inner landscapes resemble our own, who carry similar rhythms and currents beneath the surface. In that recognition, something within us exhales. We do not have to try so hard. We do not have to explain ourselves in detail. We do not have to prove that we belong, because in their presence, belonging is not earned, it is assumed. And once we have tasted that kind of connection, it changes the way we move through the world. We become more attuned to it, more able to sense when it is near, and perhaps more willing to let go of what does not match it. Such moments of shared frequency are gifts, but they are also invitations. They invite us to live in a way that makes such recognition possible, to cultivate authenticity in ourselves, so that when we meet another who is tuned to the same pitch, we can step into that resonance without hesitation. And in this way, each recognition is both a meeting and a mirror, showing us not only who the other is, but who we have become. Life has a way of moving in patterns too intricate for the rational mind to map. We imagine we are directing our own course, making choices, setting goals, and determining outcomes. Yet there is another layer of design, subtle and elusive, that seems to weave events together in ways we could never predict. When two souls are truly aligned not merely by preference or convenience, but in essence and inner frequency, this hidden design becomes a quiet force, bending the currents of life toward their inevitable convergence. What may appear to us as a series of accidents, coincidences, or even setbacks is often the slow turning of unseen gears, ensuring that paths cross at the exact moment they are meant to. This timing is rarely under our control, and it seldom obeys the logic of efficiency. The route toward meeting the right person often appears chaotic, as though we are being led away from them rather than toward them, yet what feels like divergence is often preparation. The world may rearrange circumstances in ways that frustrate us, cancelled plans, missed opportunities, sudden endings, or delays that keep us waiting when we most want to move forward. In the moment, these interruptions feel meaningless, even cruel. But when seen from a distance, they reveal a sequence that is almost artistic in its precision. Consider the story of two travelers whose meeting was so ordinary in appearance that it would have been easy to overlook its significance. They did not encounter each other in a grand or dramatic setting, but in the liminal space of an airport terminal. Each was there for separate reasons, each was on a different trajectory, and yet a chain of minor disruptions, a late alarm, a traffic jam, a sudden seat reassignment placed them in the same small cafe at the same small airport. A casual exchange about the weather led to shared laughter, then to a deeper conversation that felt unhurried despite the bustle around them. Contact details were exchanged almost as an afterthought. A year later, they were married. From the outside, this could be explained away as statistical inevitability. Countless strangers meet every day, and some of those meetings lead to lasting bonds. But to reduce it to probability alone is to miss the living texture of the moment. It was not just that they met. It was that they met then, not earlier, when one of them was still carrying the residue of an old heartbreak, not later, when life's demands might have pulled them in opposite directions. They met at the precise intersection of readiness and opportunity. This is the signature of life's orchestration, a timing so exact that, when recognized, it evokes both wonder and humility. The human tendency is to misinterpret the delays and detours that lead to such moments. We call them failures or inconveniences, cursing the missed train or lamenting the closed door, not realizing that these are often the adjustments that align our path with someone else's. It is as if the universe is moving pieces on a chessboard, but because we can only see a few squares around us, we cannot grasp the larger strategy at play. This is why some of the most meaningful connections arise out of circumstances that at the time felt undesirable. There is a kind of humor in how life arranges these intersections. It might take you to the far side of the world only to meet someone who grew up in the same neighborhood as you. It might make you miss an event you were desperate to attend, only for you to stumble into a smaller gathering where a single conversation alters the course of your life. It might end a relationship you thought was permanent, leaving you devastated, only for that absence to make room for a connection that will carry you further than you could have imagined. These patterns are not obvious in their unfolding, but they reveal themselves with clarity once the threads have been woven together. To trust this orchestration requires a surrender of control, and for many, that is the most difficult part. We want certainty, we want to know the when and the how, but life seems to withhold those details until we are ready to see them not as guarantees, but as gifts. Readiness, in this sense, is not merely about emotional availability. It is about having lived through enough to recognize what stands before you when it arrives. A meeting that happens too soon may be overlooked or mishandled. One that happens too late may pass by entirely, but when the moment comes at exactly the right time, it feels less like the start of something new and more like the continuation of something long in the making. This is why, when you look back on certain encounters, you may feel an almost eerie sense of inevitability. You recall the countless small decisions, delays, and diversions that led to it, and you realize that had any one of them been different, you might have missed it entirely. And yet the connection feels so integral to your life's story that you cannot imagine it not existing. This duality, the fragility of the meeting and the strength of its place in your life, is part of the mystery. Perhaps the greatest lesson in all of this is to be careful in how you judge the events of your life as they unfold. The very thing you resist might be the thing that positions you for the encounter you most need. The moment you call a setback may be the opening act of a much larger design. Even endings, painful as they are, may serve as quiet clearings, making space for what could not enter while something else occupied its place. The world is not a purely random scatter of events, nor is it a rigidly fixed script. It is something in between, a living field of possibilities shaped both by our own choices and by forces beyond our immediate comprehension. When two aligned souls are meant to meet, that field bends in their favor. Roads that seemed unrelated begin to converge. Circumstances that felt arbitrary reveal their hidden purpose. And when the moment finally comes, it feels at once surprising and entirely natural, as though it could not have been otherwise. It is here, in this interplay between the seen and unseen, that life does its most beautiful work. You may not be able to trace its patterns in real time, but you can choose to live with the awareness that they are there. You can hold your plans lightly, remain open to the unexpected, and trust that even the strangest detours may be leading you exactly where you are meant to go, and perhaps into the presence of the soul whose path has been winding toward yours all along. When two souls meet in true alignment, The connection is never static. It does not exist merely to offer comfort or companionship, though those things may arise naturally. Its deeper purpose is transformation. The relationship becomes a crucible, a place where the heat of shared experience burns away the unnecessary and refines the essential. These souls do not simply hold hands along the road of life. They move each other forward, accelerating one another's evolution in ways neither could achieve alone. It is as if each serves as a lens, bringing the other's latent potential into sharper focus. In such a connection, the other becomes both a mirror and a challenge. Through the mirror, you see your strengths, reflected qualities you might have undervalued in yourself until you witnessed them recognized and affirmed by another. Through the challenge, you confront your shadows, the unhealed parts, the defenses, the patterns that have kept you small. These are not exposed to shame you, but to invite you into greater wholeness. And because the reflection comes from someone whose energy resonates with your own, you are more willing to face what you might otherwise avoid. It is important to understand that this process is rarely gentle in its entirety. Growth, by its nature, disrupts the familiar. It stretches the limits of who you thought you were. Even in the presence of deep love and mutual respect, there will be moments of friction, times when the truth the other person holds up to you feels too sharp to look at. But it is precisely in these moments when the temptation is to withdraw, to protect the ego, that the possibility for profound transformation lies. Aligned souls do not run from these tensions. They allow them to be part of the shared work. In this way, the challenges become gateways, not barriers. History offers us many examples of this dynamic. Consider Marie and Pierre Curie, whose partnership extended far beyond their scientific achievements. Their work together was not merely a pooling of knowledge. It was the fusion of two minds committed to a vision greater than either could hold alone. Or think of the countless couples whose names will never appear in books, yet whose quiet, enduring partnership has shaped their families, communities, and the lives of those around them. Perhaps they built a business together, or devoted their time to service, or simply cultivated a home where truth and kindness could thrive. In all such cases, the form the partnership takes may differ, but the underlying principle is the same. Alignment magnifies potential. This magnification can be felt in everyday life. You may notice that with such a person, your ambitions take on new clarity, not because they push you with external pressure, but because their belief in you calls forth your best. You begin to imagine more for yourself, and in imagining more, you begin to act differently. Likewise, you become a source of clarity and strength for them. It is a mutual exchange, a constant flow of inspiration, accountability, and renewal. One of the most remarkable qualities of this kind of relationship is that it does not diminish individuality. On the contrary, it honors and protects it. True alignment is never about merging into one indistinguishable identity. It is about standing fully in your own being while encouraging the other to do the same. Like two strong trees growing side by side, their roots intertwined yet their trunks separate, such souls share in strength without losing themselves. And yet, there is also a deeper layer at work, a sense that your paths were always meant to intersect for the sake of this mutual awakening. Before meeting, you may have been progressing on your own journey, learning, healing, and striving. But once the connection is made, the pace of change often accelerates. What might have taken years to realize alone can unfold in months. This is not because the other person is doing the work for you, but because the presence of their energy seems to remove unnecessary obstacles, making the path ahead clearer. However, it would be misleading to suggest that such growth is effortless. The very act of holding a mirror to one another can evoke resistance. There may be times when you resent the clarity the other brings, wishing instead for the comfort of ignorance. But over time, the trust between you becomes strong enough to weather these storms. You come to understand that the moments of discomfort are not signs of misalignment, but signs that the connection is doing its deeper work. Even the most harmonious relationships will face external trials, losses, changes, unforeseen difficulties. But when two aligned souls encounter such trials, they meet them with a shared strength. Rather than turning on each other, they turn toward each other, drawing on the energy that flows between them. This is one of the clearest markers of true alignment. Adversity becomes a forge that strengthens the bond, not a hammer that shatters it. And perhaps most importantly, this shared growth is never one-sided. In less aligned relationships, one person often plays the role of giver, guide, or teacher, while the other remains primarily a receiver. But in the meeting of aligned souls, the roles shift fluidly, each taking turns being the anchor or the wind in the other's sails. There is no competition, no tallying of who has given more. The growth of one is experienced as the growth of both. This is why such connections often leave a lasting imprint, even if they do not endure in the form we expect. There are instances when aligned souls come together for a season rather than a lifetime, yet the changes they inspire in each other continue to unfold long after parting. The work they have done together in shaping each other's vision, in awakening dormant parts of the self, becomes part of their inner architecture. In this way, the relationship remains a living force woven into the fabric of who they are. It is a rare and precious thing to encounter another whose very being calls you to rise, not through criticism or demand, but through the undeniable fact of their presence. And it is equally rare to be that person for someone else. When it happens, it feels like standing before a mirror that does not flatter or distort, but shows you as you are and as you could be. Such relationships are not the product of luck alone. They are the meeting of two lives prepared to both give and receive at that level. In a world where so much of human interaction remains on the surface, where conversations and connections are too often transactional or fleeting, the meeting of aligned souls is a reminder of what is possible. It reveals the depth we are capable of, the power of mutual growth, and the beauty of walking a path not in isolation, but in resonance with another who sees both our light and our shadow and chooses to stay. And in that choice we are changed. Life, in its unending complexity, will always place before us circumstances that challenge even the most profound connections. Distance may stretch between two aligned souls, misunderstandings may cloud the once clear air, and seasons of doubt may cast long shadows over what was once certain. Yet, when alignment is true, it does not collapse beneath these pressures. Instead, it bends, adapts, and finds new forms of expression. It is not brittle like something that must be constantly protected from harm. It is alive, capable of evolving with the changing tides of life. Such a connection, like the ocean, may recede from view at times, but its depths remain, and the tide always knows how to return. In the quiet spaces of separation, the bond is not lost. It rests beneath the surface, still vibrant in its essence, waiting for the right moment to emerge again. Sometimes this waiting lasts days or weeks, other times it spans decades. There are countless stories of souls who once knew each other deeply, childhood friends, first loves, kindred spirits who, after years apart, meet again as if no time has passed. The conversation flows with the same ease, the understanding returns instantly, and there is no need to rebuild what was never broken. This is the nature of true energetic alignment. It is not tethered to constant proximity, but to a deep and enduring recognition that transcends circumstance. Such recognition does not depend on the daily rituals of contact. Even in silence it speaks. Even when life has carried you into different worlds, the thread remains unbroken. It may be invisible to the eye, but it is felt in the heart, a quiet pulse that says, we are still connected. This is because alignment is not made of possession or control. It is not an arrangement of convenience or obligation. Rather, it is an acknowledgement of something sacred, something that exists beyond the shifting forms of life. It is the soul's way of saying, I see you, and meaning it in the deepest possible sense. This is why true alignment does not suffocate. It allows space. It understands that each soul must walk its own path, even when that path leads away for a time. There is no grasping, no desperate attempt to hold what cannot be held, because there is trust in the force that brought the two together in the first place. That same mysterious intelligence, call it fate, destiny, synchronicity, or divine orchestration, is trusted to guide the connection through whatever lies ahead. To love in this way is to live without the fear of loss, because one understands that what is real cannot be lost. It may change form, it may go quiet, but its essence remains untouched. Of course, this endurance is not always comfortable. When life imposes separation, when misunderstandings linger, or when the seasons of growth seem to take each person in a different direction, it can feel as though the connection is slipping away. The ego resists such uncertainty, craving reassurance through constant presence. But true alignment calls us to step beyond the ego's need for control. It asks us to rest in the knowing that love and resonance are not bound by time or geography. This trust does not mean passivity. Rather, it invites a deeper form of participation, one rooted in patience, humility, and the willingness to let the connection breathe. And there is a beauty in this breathing space. When two souls part and then meet again, they bring with them the treasures of their separate journeys. They return changed, expanded, perhaps even softened by time. The reunion is enriched by all they have learned in the interim. In this way, the very distance that seemed like a threat to the bond becomes part of its strength. Life, in its paradoxical wisdom, uses separation to deepen the connection, to give it a broader horizon. There is also a lesson here about the nature of love itself. We are taught, in subtle and overt ways, to equate love with possession, to believe that we must hold tightly to someone in order to keep them. But alignment teaches us a higher truth. Love is not ownership. It is recognition. It is respect. It is the freedom to let another be fully themselves, even when that self must journey far from you. The moment love becomes an attempt to cage or control, it begins to wither. But when love trusts, when it allows space without fear, it thrives because it rests on something deeper than circumstance. To witness such enduring alignment is to glimpse a form of connection that is rare in our age of constant distraction and restless movement. It is quiet yet powerful, resilient yet tender. It can withstand silence, survive storms, and remain unchanged by the surface-level shifts that so often erode lesser bonds. And when the moment comes for such souls to meet again, whether after a day, a year, or half a lifetime, the recognition is immediate. The eyes know, the heart remembers. The resonance that first called them together rises again, not as something new, but as something that has been there all along, patiently waiting beneath the flow of time. In the end, this is what makes true alignment so extraordinary. It is not fragile, but eternal in its nature. It does not require constant proof, because it exists as a living truth within both souls. It is the kind of connection that can be trusted to survive whatever tests life brings, not because it is shielded from hardship, but because it knows how to adapt to it. It is a force that cannot be manufactured or faked, and once found, it becomes one of the most steadying and liberating presences in a lifetime. And perhaps the most liberating truth of all is this: you do not need to chase such alignment or cling to it in fear. You need only to recognize it when it appears, to honor it with your presence and authenticity, and to trust that it will endure in the form it is meant to take. Whether that form is a lifelong partnership, a series of meetings across decades, or a quiet knowing that spans the years without contact, the essence remains. The same unseen current that first drew the two of you together will always know the way to guide you through distance, through time, through every changing season of life. When the energy of two souls aligns, no border, no distance, no obstacle can prevent their meeting. It may happen in a crowded city street, in a quiet library, through a random act of kindness, or in the digital space between two glowing screens. But when it happens, you will feel it not as a surge of novelty, but as the quiet certainty that you have stepped into a story that was already being written. So tend to your own alignment first. Live in your truth. Trust the timing of your life, and remember, the universe is less a chaotic place than it appears. It is a careful architect, and somewhere it is already drawing the lines that will one day bring you face to face with the soul whose energy mirrors your own.